So, you have been contemplating the idea of traveling solo for a while. You want to have a fun and fulfilling trip, but you feel that doing it all alone by yourself might be a little bit challenging. Or you get the feeling that the trip might not even be worth it if you're not experiencing it with someone else. Well, let me tell you that this is a completely normal feeling. Despite being a relatively experienced solo traveler myself, I still get this feeling of intimidation before every solo trip, or even within the trip itself when I'm going from one city to another. So in this video, I'll try to condense all my experiences on how to meet people and make friends while traveling solo. Hello, my name is Bahrawi, and in this channel, I try to share some of the stuff that have helped me level up my life whether I am traveling or at home. Now, let me share with you a couple of things before we start. Number one is that traveling solo does not equal traveling alone. In fact, I have had the feeling of being socially overwhelmed much more often when I was traveling solo than when I was traveling with just another person or with a group of people. The other point is that the likelihood of meeting new people and being in a lot of social interactions is much higher when you're traveling solo than when you're traveling with someone else or with a group of people. It sounds really paradoxical and counterintuitive, but think about it. You are there alone, you are open to meet and talk to new people, you don't have this safety person or a group of people to go back to, and you're definitely more flexible with your own plans compared to when traveling in a group or with another person. After all, no one is going to be affected by a change in plans other than you. You don't have to defer to any other person if you just want to do something else, which is really the perfect recipe for meeting people in the most random and fun ways. Also, although I do not want to make this video about myself necessarily, I will be sharing a lot of personal anecdotes throughout the video to show you the power of taking the initiative while solo traveling. I'm stating this here because this is a very common theme throughout the video. If I had not taken the initiative to talk to strangers, most of the tips in this video will be kind of useless, and I would have actually missed on a wealth of great experiences that have, I wouldn't say shaped my life, but gave me a lot of memories to look back to and feel warmth about my solo travel experiences. So without further ado, here are my top tips to meet people more easily when traveling solo. Number 1. Choose your accommodation wisely. I think the accommodation, or where you decide to stay during your solo trip, is arguably the most important factor in the ease of socializing and meeting new people. Because logically, the easiest way to meet people is to go to places where people actually are open to talk to other people and make new connections and have fun. And in my opinion, there is no other place that fits the description better, especially for travelers, than hostels. For example, when I think about my last trip to the Balkans back in July, apart from one girl that I met in a tech store in Skopje and a group of people that a friend introduced me to, almost all of the connections and the people that I bonded with were people that I met in the hostels I was staying in different cities. Of course, this is not surprising at all since I have not used any other type of accommodation during this specific trip, so most of the people that I meet would be from the hostels, but I'm just stating the fact that it's actually the easiest place to meet people while traveling. Now, let's talk about a number of points regarding staying at hostels. The first point is the number of beds in the dorm room. Naturally, the dorm rooms with the highest number of beds would lead to the highest likelihood of encountering new people and talking to them. In my first Euro trip when I was still in college, I would pick the hostels or the dorm rooms with the highest number of beds possible, but currently my sweet spot when I travel solo is like 4 to 8 dorm beds and not more than that. I recently stayed at a hostel in Skopje in North Macedonia for just a single night or 2 nights, and it had like 12 beds, and all 12 beds were actually occupied at one night. And in my opinion, it was like I wasn't really that comfortable with that number of people in one place, but it's just a night. Also, if you're not the type of person that feels comfortable sharing a sleeping space with other people, and so you will not feel comfortable staying in a dorm room, you can always book a private room inside the hostel. However, please be aware that not all hostels provide this option, and if the hostel provides this option, they are usually only 1 or 2 rooms, and in high season they are usually booked up, so you might want to make the reservation a bit earlier. The second point is that the golden place to meet people while staying at a hostel is actually the common room rather than the dorm rooms, from my own experience. Because when you just sit in the common room, some people would not want to talk with anyone, and that's completely acceptable, but generally people will be most open to talk to other people if they are actually actively staying in the common room and just chilling. Now, if you are actually staying at a common room and just want to work on something and don't want someone else to bother you, I would say that just putting the headphones in would deter 99% of people from actually making a connection with you, if that's what you actually want. This is actually like not a travel specific tip, but it works. Now, what to say to people to initiate conversations is a very valid question. And when you are staying at a hostel, the easiest conversation opener in the history of conversation openers is simply "where are you from?" which normally flows into "how long have you been traveling?" or what cities have you traveled to so far? And then the conversation flows naturally from there to whatever direction you both want. Another non-travel specific tip is to always try to remember people's name. Also, if you actually do forget the person's name, it's always better to re-ask for the name than to just refer to that person in generic terms, because it's very obvious when you don't remember someone's name. Another valuable tip while staying at hostels: invite people to do stuff, just completely normal stuff. For example, if you're going out to exchange money or just buying groceries, just ask if someone else wants to tag along. Sometimes someone will want to come with you, other times no one will want to join you, and both are completely okay. Also, while a large portion of people stay at hostels specifically because of cheaper prices, not everyone is staying there for this reason. Some people just stay there at hostels for the socialization purposes. I personally could afford to stay at other types of accommodation like Airbnbs or a hotel, but I actually stay in hostels just for the socialization purposes. And I actually met a lot of people with this mindset, especially those who are 25 and older. Now, which type of hostel to stay in? Party hostels versus non-party hostels. Of course, this depends on a number of factors like your age, your personality, the type of trip you're looking for. But note that if you're a digital nomad or you intended to do some work during traveling, doing this at a party hostel would be very challenging. However, anything is possible though. However, the only type of hostel I would argue that you should just stay away from is the hotel-like hostels, because generally there would be no common rooms in such hostels and everything would be so sterile, so the social atmosphere would be kind of dead, which defies the whole purpose of trying to meet new people while traveling. Another extra tip for booking hostels: try to book through hostelworld.com. Because they usually have a very nice feature, which is a chat that have all the people that have booked this hostel through their app or other hostels that have access to the Hostel World app. This gives you the benefit of connecting with other people before arriving to the hostel, those who are staying at the same hostels or even in different hostels but in the same city. And I actually have a cool anecdote regarding this chat. So like in my last day in Skopje, I met this Dutch girl in the hostel I was staying in, and we had a very nice conversation about politics, because like she had a very keen interest in the Middle East and stuff. And the conversation was so interesting that I wanted to maybe talk to her later about her views regarding a number of things, but I had to go out, and when I came back, she was out, and I left the other day and was not able to meet her again. So I actually used the chat to connect with her and have her social media, and then we are still talking up until this day, just because like I found her randomly on the group chat on the Hostel World app. Now, other than hostels, a very good place to meet people is staying at co-living spaces. Co-living spaces are just places where people with similar interests stay together and live together for a while. So there are digital nomad-centered co-living spaces, there are wellness co-living spaces, there are every type of co-living spaces. Similar to hostels, you can have a shared room, usually with much less people than dorm rooms in hostels, or you can have your own private room, and the purpose is that to feel like a sense of community while staying there. And unlike hostels, most people tend to stay for longer periods of time at co-living spaces, so you have a greater chance of having tighter bonds with people and hanging out with them more. In general, co-living spaces tend to be more expensive than hostels, but this definitely depends on the city where you're staying in or the part of world. Now, my second tip to meet people while traveling alone is to pick activities that you are likely to meet people through. Of course, I would urge you to just pick activities that you actually want to do yourself regardless of the socialization aspect. And the bonus is that if they are actually social activities. For me, the most straightforward way to find these activities is to look for hostel organized ones, because this has the benefit of hanging out with people that you have actually met already, so doing activities with them is actually kind of fun. Another activity that is great for meeting people is free walking tours. I have personally met a lot of amazing people while doing walking tours, whether they are travelers like myself or actually locals. For example, I met this amazing girl from Argentina while I was doing a walking tour in Budapest in Hungary, and she asked me to take some pictures of her, and she took some pictures of me as well, and we had a very nice chat throughout the walking tour. And actually she asked me to go out with her to the thermal baths, which is very touristic thing to do while staying in Budapest, but that was 2 days later and I had already left Budapest by that point, unfortunately. I also had my best ever walking tour in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and between each place where we go from one monument to another place and stuff, I got the chance to talk with the amazing tour guide, and I had some of the most amazing conversations with her regarding like the dynamic of the Bosnian society and religion and very cool stuff. And I still have her in social media as well, so it was a very nice connection through a walking tour. Now, the third thing is that if you're staying for a longer period in one city or in one place, you can always look for hobby clubs. So if you are into running, for example, you can look for a running club, or if you want to learn a new recipe, you can look for a cooking class or whatever. A bonus tip if you are a digital nomad or a person who wants to work while traveling is that you can look for co-working spaces in the city you're staying in. The third tip to meet people while traveling is to give social apps a try. For example, using apps like Meetup or Couchsurfing, Hangouts, or even local Facebook groups can help you find events and meet people in the city you are staying in. Now, in all honesty, I have not used these apps myself while traveling solo, but many people have been able to make friends and meet new people through these apps, so I thought I would include this point here as a reference in the video. My only experience was actually using Couchsurfing to have an accommodation for the night, and I would like to make a shout out to my two amazing hosts, both based in Vienna, which is actually one of the dearest cities to my heart. Now, the fourth tip to meet people while traveling is to initiate conversations in everyday situations. If you're solo traveling, in general, you have to be the one initiating the conversations to increase your likelihood of meeting new people and making friends. And the following are a number of situations in which you can approach other people to have a nice conversation. Now, some of the most fulfilling social interactions I had while solo traveling was either while I was waiting for transportation or in transportation. You could just be waiting for your flight in an airport, and if someone interesting sits beside you, you can just ask them where they are going to and what their destination is, and depending on how they reply, if they are interested to talk to you, you can complete the conversation or talk more, or just leave it at that. Of course, it does not have to be airports only. You can just talk to about everyone. If you're waiting for a bus, you are waiting for a taxi, you are actually in the metro, whatever it is really. For example, I was once waiting for a bus in Belgrade, Serbia, going to another city in Serbia as well called Novi Sad, and this Serbian local starts to talk to me in English. And so we had a very nice chat in the bus station, and he actually sat beside me on the bus. And when we arrived in Novi Sad, his hometown, he asked me, or he offered me a taxi ride with him, so just he could drop me off at the touristic place I wanted to visit first, rather than me walking this long distance, which was like 2 kilometers from the bus station to the city center, or just taking public transportation. The second everyday situation you can engage with people in is asking people who are by themselves to take a picture of you. And after you get the picture, which is your main purpose supposedly, you can ask them if the situation feels acceptable, if they are locals or if they're traveling, and based on the conversation and how it goes, you can decide what to do. Also, just be smart about the social situation and try to maybe talk to travelers or target travelers, because they are usually would be willing and more open to talk to people because they are traveling by themselves, rather than locals, which like they might be busy, they might be going about their day, they might be a little bit stressed. Of course, this is not like a general rule. You can have a very nice interaction with a local and a very bad interaction with a traveler, but this has been my experience anecdotally. Now, the third social situation is people eating alone. Now, this might be a little bit controversial, and this is actually the highest difficulty one out of the social situations I mentioned. But you could just approach someone who is eating alone, especially if he or she is a traveler, and ask them if they want to join you because you're also eating alone. And I actually had something kind of similar happen to me before in 2020, just before the pandemic. I was at the airport in Vienna and I was just waiting for my flight at a McDonald's, and then this French girl comes and asks if she can join me at the table. And let me make something clear first, there was not a lot of available spaces at McDonald's at this point in time, so I'm sure that this had something to do with it. And again, this led to a very nice conversation. We talked for a while and then we had a little walk around the airport together, and we then had to catch our respective flights. Now, all of the everyday situations that I've mentioned are ones that I have personal experience with, or that I think are easier to meet people through. However, of course, you can meet people at literally any other situation or at any other place. It really just depends on the social context and your willingness to initiate a conversation. So, in conclusion, if you just want to meet people while traveling, you just have to stack the odds in your favor. This can be done by choosing the right accommodation, by picking up social activities, and just by being open to engaging in spontaneous interactions and everyday situations. In my opinion, the key is to be proactive and to just embrace the possibilities that might arise. Thank you for watching and have a nice rest of your day.